Good morning. My name is Keith Kondrich. I'm the Executive Director for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul here in Pittsburgh. And for today's Monday meditation, I want to focus on a gospel passage from the Gospel of Luke that's probably very familiar to most of us. It's Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. And it's the story about Jesus visiting his friends Martha and Mary. So let me just share that passage with you now. As they continued on their journey, he entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me all by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." I think this is a great gospel passage for us to reflect upon because it really is relevant to the way we live our lives today. Jesus is telling Martha to slow down, to be present to him, to be present to the people around her, to be present to the moment. And I know for myself and probably most of you, being present to the moment is a really difficult thing in this day and age, especially when we're constantly barraged with cell phones and texts and emails and Twitter and all those different things that constantly interrupt our opportunities and our availability to be present to one another. So let me give you an example of that in my own life. Recently, I was visiting patients at a local nursing home. And I was making my rounds and I had my clipboard and I had a very tight schedule of who to see and what to say and what to accomplish. And as I was walking down the hall, there was a woman sitting in a wheelchair all by herself. And so I stopped and I said, "Hi, how are you?" No response. She just kind of stared at the ground, very lethargic. So I knelt down and got at face level with her, and I touched her hand and I said, "Hi, how are you?" Again, no response, just very lethargic, just very dull. And so I decided, you know what, my schedule's really busy. I really don't have time to spend trying to coax this woman into a conversation. And I thought, well, let me try one more thing. So I asked her how the food was, no response. I asked her where she was from, no response. And at that point I thought, you know what, I just don't have time. I don't have time to be present to this woman anymore. I looked at my clipboard and I thought, I gotta get moving. I gotta see the next person. So just kind of on a whim, I tapped her on the hand and I said, "Okay, I'll see you later." And all of a sudden her face lit up. And she looked up and she looked me in the eye and she said, "Alligator?" And I was kind of taken back. So I said, "See you later." She said, "Alligator?" And then I said, "After a while." And she said, "Crocodile." So for about 5 minutes, this was our total exchange. She wouldn't respond to anything else, but somewhere deep inside of her, she remembered that old childish rhyme, "See you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile." So I spent probably 5, 6, 7 minutes with her, just constantly going back and forth. And I would tap her on the hand and I'd say, "See you later." And she'd smile and say, "Alligator." After a while, she'd smile and say, "Crocodile." Couldn't get her to say anything else, so we had connected. At some point, just being present to her, being available to her, not rushing off, but taking a little bit of time just to be present. And again, she lit up. She was on fire, she was alive, something resonated with her at some level, and I don't know what that was. Psychologists could tell you all kinds of different theories on that, but at some level, she and I had made a connection, okay? I took time away from the busyness of my schedule, I took time away from the hecticness of what was going on, and I just spent time with her trying to connect, just being with her. So, next time I go back to the nursing home this week, sure enough, I'm going to be going through "See You Later, Alligator" with this beautiful, wonderful woman. I think it's a great lesson, the story of Martha and Mary in the gospel, that everybody wants our undivided attention. When we're with people, whether we're together as a family, with our spouses, with our children, with the people that God has called us to serve, we need to give them our undivided attention. You know, you go out to restaurants today, you go out to a ball game, you go out to any public place, and everybody is distracted. Everybody, you look around at a restaurant, families are not talking, they're texting, right? And not to be on a crusade, but that's not the lesson that Jesus has for us. The lesson for today, the meditation for today is we need to give each other our undivided attention. In St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 6, he says, "Behold, now is a very acceptable time. Indeed, now is the day of salvation. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, not next week, not next year. Let's not put off today what God has called us to do. Let's not put off those people that God has called us to be present to now. As St. Paul tells us, now is the acceptable time." Have a great week, and God bless you.